New album called Off the Wall. All right? Off the Wall was the first solo album that Michael Jackson came out with, and it was different. Quincy Jones collaborated with this album, and it was just different. It had a different beat. It was just different than the things around it. And then it was like a year and a half later, this album came out that ended up being sold more albums, sold more records, more cassettes, more CDs, more whatever than any other artist in history, and it was called Thriller. And I remember watching the night in the American Music Awards when Michael Jackson came out and moonwalked on the stage. And came out with not two gloves, but one sparkly glove. And everybody thought that was just the coolest thing ever. I always wondered, where's the other glove? I thought maybe he left it in the back, couldn't find it, whatever the case was, and it just stuck. But I remember that night when he was on the stage, and the first time that Michael Jackson, started doing all that crazy. I ain't even going to try to do it, so you can laugh at me and put me on YouTube or something like that. It ain't going to happen. And I remember that night. But you know what? Michael Jackson, whether you like him or you don't like him, changed the music forever from that point on. From that point on. Another catalytic leader, just in another industry, in the sports industry, was a guy by the name of Michael Jordan. And Michael Jordan, I remember watching him play at University of North Carolina, play college ball. And I remember watching him. I remember him shooting that game-winning three-pointer. And I remember all those things. And I watched as his career and you know what? He set the bar so high. He won so many. When he started winning championships, he won so many. People couldn't even fathom it. He made everybody around him great. And I remember going on that ride. And some of you right now, you're going to look back 20 years from now, and you're going to be talking about LeBron James. That he set the bar another level. But there are those catalytic leaders, those catalytic type of people who transform things and they change things forever. And before my day and before your day, and maybe your grandparents, they remember this, depending on how old your grandparents are. There was somebody else that changed things and was a catalytic leader, but it was a negative catalytic leader. His name was Adolf Hitler. And Adolf Hitler came to power in one of the worst economic times in Germany's history. And so what they did is he got people, his hate message, he got people to literally think that it was a certain nationality, that it was Jews that kept everybody down. Because most of the Jewish people he knew were successful. And we know that years later, 11 to 17 million people were annihilated, destroyed, because of one man's hatred. But do you see how some people can change things for the positive and for the good, and other people can change it for the negative? But today, is it still not changing us today? I mean, if you were look on my phone and I was to turn it on, and the picture that's on the front when you turn on my phone is actually a picture of a scripture that was on the wall at the Holocaust Museum that I took in Washington, D.C. And it reminds me of the price the lies that were taken. But catalytic leaders, catalytic people, can either change things for the positive or for the negative. I want to show something to you. I want to show you a video of a guy. As a matter of fact, this is done by a guy by the name of, he actually used this video. His name is Derek Sivers. And how many of you ever heard of TED Talks or TED? Have you ever heard of that movement at all? It's basically some of the world's greatest thinkers come together and they talk about their industry and what they're doing and all. There's been on nonprofit and AIDS and things like that. You've had Melinda Gates, Bill Gates' wife, that actually spoke, at this thing. And so this guy by the name of Derek Sivers spoke, and he did a video and he showed how one person can change the atmosphere and can change things. One person can do it. I want you to watch this video on leadership.
If you've learned a lot about leadership and making a movement, then let's watch a movement happen start to finish in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons. First, of course, a leader needs the guts to stand alone and look ridiculous. But what he's doing is so simple, it's almost instructional. This is key. You must be easy to follow. Now here comes the first follower with a crucial role. He publicly shows everyone else how to follow. Notice how the leader embraces him as an equal. So it's not about the leader anymore. It's about them, plural. Notice how he's calling to his friends to join in. So it takes guts to be a first follower. You stand out and you brave ridicule yourself. Being a first follower is an underappreciated form of leadership. The first follower transforms a lone nut into a leader. If the leader is the flint, the first follower is the spark that really makes the fire. Now here's the second follower. This is a turning point. It's proof the first has done well. Now it's not a lone nut and it's not two nuts. 3 is a crowd and a crowd is news. A movement must be public. Make sure outsiders see more than just the leader. Everyone needs to see the followers because new followers emulate followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, then 3 more immediately. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point and now we have a movement. As more people jump in, it's no longer risky. If they were on the fence before, there's no reason not to join in now. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, and they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. And over the next minute, you'll see the rest who prefer to stay part of the crowd, because eventually they'd be ridiculed for not joining. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how a movement is made. So let's recap what we've learned. If you are a version of the shirtless dancing guy, all alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals, making everything clearly about the movement, not you. Be public, be easy to follow. But the biggest lesson here, did you catch it? Leadership is over-glorified. Yes, it started with the shirtless guy, and he'll get all the credit, but you saw what really happened. It was the first follower that transformed a lone nut into a leader. There's no movement without the first follower. See, we're told that we all need to be leaders, but that would be really ineffective. The best way to make a movement, if you really care, is to courageously follow and show others how to follow. When you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first person to stand up and join in.
Was that not transforming? Did it not bring change? One dude enjoying an illegal drug out on the hill attracted a lot of other people, maybe enjoying the same thing he was for a time. But they all came together and it changed. That's what Jesus did. Jesus was a catalytic leader. Every one of us cannot be the leader. And that's okay. Because we've all been told, be a leader, be a leader. But what you heard off of that video is that not everybody, what if everybody was a leader? We would all go different ways, wouldn't we? Because we wouldn't follow somebody else. We would go somewhere, we would just go on our own separate ways, and we would all be individualists. But see, God puts in all of us. He allows some of us to have the gifts to be leaders and others to help leaders and others to attract, just like the second and the third one did, attracted everybody else. But the thing is what I'm asking you to really think in your heart and your mind right now is very simple. What are you going to follow? What are the things that you are seeing that God is bringing change to and transforming that He wants you to be involved in? It could be right here in this youth group. It could be at school. It could be in the community. It could be in Atlanta somewhere. I mean, how many of you have ever heard of the conference that they do every year, and it's called Passion? Anybody ever heard of Passion? Okay, for some of you that haven't, when you get older, you'll love going to this thing. They do it at the Georgia Dome, and they fill the thing up. with like 50,000 people, and it's so big that they have an overflow in the World Congress Center. And there's all these college students that come in from all over the United States. And it has become this movement. But it had to be started by one person, and that person was named Louis Giglio. But not everybody can be Louis Giglio. It takes others to come alongside and make that movement. When you think about what changes culture, how many of you know that, how many of you think that culture is pushed on you? That music is pushed on you, that fashion is pushed on you, that certain ways of doing education or learning is pushed on you. How many of you think that it's pushed? Those kinds of things are pushed. Even how you act. How many of you know that today in society that homosexuality is literally everywhere you look, it's being pushed? And it's almost like, even though that only like 4 or 5% of the whole, maybe even less than that, of the whole population of the United States is a homosexual, they make it seem like everybody's gay. Do they not? Everywhere you go, there's a gay person involved. And the thing is this. A few people changed that. A few people in Hollywood and in different areas of life and different parts of culture made that mainstream. The question is this. How are you going to make God mainstream where you are? And you know what? It's not being the crazy. Okay, how many of you know that they've turned Jesus into a Republican? Did everybody know that? Jesus is a Republican. If you didn't know that, if you're a Democrat, Jesus is not a Democrat. He's a Republican. And it's all because a group pushed this notion that to be a Christian, you got to be a Republican. I don't believe that. I believe you can be a great Democrat and still go to heaven, and Jesus loves you. And there's all this stuff going on. What I'm trying to challenge you with is this. How can you change the world around you? How can you be catalytic in where you're at? How can you transform where you're at? How can you do that? There was a family in the 13th century. They were called the Medici family. That's why we get the name Medici Project with what we're doing from. This family was from Florence, Italy. They were the most influential family of their day. This is what they were responsible for. In the Dark Ages, they wanted to see culture change. They wanted to see things changed. So they commissioned people like, how many of you ever heard of Michelangelo? Leonardo da Vinci? Galileo? They literally paid their money so that these people could do what they did. They were so influential that even the word medicine is derived from their name. 4 popes came from the Medici family. 4. So not only did they impact art, not only did they impact science, not only did they impact business, but they actually impacted the church also. And our whole belief in what we believe is this. If one family was able to change the world in such a way that they brought us out of the Dark Ages into the Renaissance, and today we're still being impacted by that, why can't we raise up a group of young people who will love and serve their community and love God in such a way that 500 years from now, culture and people will be talking about you? And that's why we do what we do. That's what we do. But I want to go back just for a little bit here in closing. I want to wrap some of this stuff up for you because I want you to see biblically a catalytic leader. Because you can go all through the Bible, from the Old Testament to the New Testament, and you can read about catalytic leaders. But I'm going to read this one part because there was a guy by the name of Paul. His life was literally transformed. It was transformed so much. This is somebody who hated God. Or he hated Jesus. He actually was a Jewish follower. So anything against the Pharisees, Sadducees, and any of that kind of religious kind of teaching, that's why he was. Did you know that Paul, when he was Saul, did you know that he used to kill Christians? Anybody know that? Would grab them and have them stoned to death just by his orders. And this is somebody that was so radically changed So radically changed. But he was